Hello everybody, this is Jesus Loving Buddy. I'm making a video called Proving the Exodus of the Bible. And basically this is just an extract from the notes I made from outlining the documentary called The Exodus Decoded. And it's a pretty wicked awesome documentary made by the History Channel. I have a link in my notes if you want to go check it out. Check the more information thingy. Go to my notes and you can see the link and along with my notes that I printed out on my mama's Christmas paper on accident. By the way, I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Jesus' birthday, and a wonderful New Year and all that jazz. I don't have a little time, so we're gonna move on. First order of business. My first example of evidence is the Almost Stela, which was made around 1500 BC, which is the exact time period in which the Israelites were leaving Egypt, and it was discovered in 1947. It is significant because it records a great storm in which Egypt was enveloped in darkness. And it goes on to record how the great storm and darkness happened when God, in the singular form, manifested his power. This is important because at the time, Egyptians believed in many gods. So why would it only mention one God, like the God of the Bible, unless it was in fact Yahweh, the Old Testament God, that was responsible, especially considering the time period? The Egyptians were just giving the Israelites the boot. Moving on. Also, the Bible never mentions the name of the Pharaoh, but the stela has revealed his name to be Almost. His mummy, along with his father's and one of his wives, have now been located. In Hebrew, Almost means the brother of Moses. Gwingity dink, I think not. Because he would have actually grown up with Moses himself, because Moses was found by the Pharaoh's daughter and all that jazz, and yeah. If you want more info, read the book of Exodus. Another reason Almost is relevant because he was famous for expelling a foreign nation called the Exodus, which was what they called the Hebrews, from around the time of 1500 BC. Except they called it the Exodus expulsion rather than the Exodus. Author Dr. Charles Pellegrino believes that it is the Bible story told from a different perspective. The Hebrews would have arrived at Egypt around 1700 BC, which is recorded at the tomb of Ben Hassan and described as Alma or God's people. That's thick. Thick. Good stuff. During the time of their arrival, the Bible describes how Joseph, the son of Jacob, aka Israel, became very powerful in Egypt as described in Genesis 41 and 39 through 43. This passage describes how the Pharaoh gave Joseph a ring or seal, in which we have found 9 of these rings, worn by Joseph's officials with his father's names on him. Jacob, but they pronounce it in Hebrew Yaakov, I think is how you say it. This is the only time in which a Hebrew name is found on a royal Egyptian seal. Ding ding ding, what do we have here, Johnny? Hebrews used an early form of alphabet rather than hieroglyphics and only worshiped the God, or the one God called El, the Old Testament God. In a cave in a place called Sarabit, they found writings on the Hebrew slaves, from the Hebrew slaves, in which a slave called out, El, save me. This writing is about 3,500 years old, and which is the oldest inscription of the Hebrew God El. See, the evidence is stacking up, stacking up, stacking. Santorini. Moving on, in Santorini, or modern-day Greece, was destroyed by a volcano 3,500 years ago. Its eruption was explosive, much like the effects of the atom bomb had on Hiroshima. Perhaps the biblical account of Exodus is related to what happened in Santorini. The Santorini pomus was found in Egypt and has now been there since 1500, which is the time of the Exodus. Hello! And his theory, Yakovich, the dude that made Exodus Decoded, is that the eruption in Santorini was caused a chain of events that was orchestrated by Yahweh. This chain of events then goes on to explain the 10 plagues of Egypt. However, I disagree with a few of the details of his theory, especially how he believes that when God turned the river into blood, he said it was red dye, but I believe it was actually blood because I love Jesus. But there is some disagreements amongst translation people that translate the Bible as to which it means like blood or actually blood. So I give them some leeway there. Because the Bible speaks of how God punished the Egyptian gods, and the Almost Stela discusses how the godlike status or idols, godlike statues or idols collapsed. We think this was caused by an earthquake. The Nile Delta is crisscrossed by fault lines, thus is likely place for an earthquake. Their theory says that this was caused by the rift between the European continental plate and the African continental plate that runs directly under Santorini. Moving on, the Imperu Papyrus says that Egypt was struck by hail that was made of ice and fire, as says Exodus 9:24, and the King James Version describes it the best. Thus, the Bible and the Egyptian accounts are both describing what scientists call volcanic hail, as says Dr. Charles Pellegrino. So, I mean, okay, alright, you have fire and hail in one substance falling down. People thought it was ridiculous when the Bible said it, but now we have an independent document saying the exact same thing. Moving on, Santorini and ash grains were found in the Nile Delta, which could only have come from this volcano. The volcano, of course, is located in Santorini. Mass graves were found by Professor Manfred Beckach of Austrian Archaeological Institution with only males in it, thus concluding that the last plague actually did kill the firstborn males as described in Exodus 11:5. Even Prince Sapar, Amos' son, who was found. So that's heavy. I mean, come on, come on. They believe the sea. Okay, moving on to the part in which Moses parted the sea. They believe this sea was called Yam Suf, which is now called the Reed Sea today. But there is some dispute on this actually. But he gives a pretty good case. Moving on, Ijmali Regional Museum has the Elarish inscription, which tells the story of the Exodus from the Pharaoh's point of view, and it speaks of the parting of the sea at what the Egyptians call Pontis Tuf, which is the same as Yom Suf in Hebrew, as says James Hoffermeer of Trinity Evangelistic School. So that's pretty heavy. Today, this is a lake called El Bala, which in Hebrew means the lake where God devoured. So this, I mean, the strong indication that this was actually this lake. This lake is now dry due to the Suez Canal. He then goes on to explain his theory of how the water parted and then smashed together. However, I do disagree with a little bit of the details in this, but it very well could have been the place where it happened. How it happened, I disagree on this theory. Anyway, moving on. There is evidence to support that some of the Hebrews left Moses and went to Santorini because we have what is called the Santorini wall paintings that describe the Hebrews' departure from Egypt to Santorini in a ship, as says Professor Christos Domas of University of Athens. So that's pretty legit. The Great Stela of Mycenae, located at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, was made at the time of Exodus. Thus, it proves that the parting of the sea actually took place because it describes in picture form involving Pharaoh chasing Moses into the parted sea. It even describes how Pharaoh and his army got washed in the waves as they came crashing back. Now, they now believe, and also they now believe to have found the actual site of Mount Sinai at contemporary Hashim el Taraf. This is because it has a cliff on it from which Moses would have spoken from, grave sites and a river, the most distinguishing characteristic from all. Because how do you have a river on top of a mountain? But that's what was described in the Bible, so he's got good indication, but there are a lot of other places that very well could have been Mount Sinai as well. Also found in the museum at Athens is what is believed to be a small golden model of the holy altar, ramp leading to the tabernacle, and the Ark of the Covenant, all depicted in one item. So this is pretty legit. If you want to see these things, go watch the video. I have it marked off when these illustrations take place. God bless. Hope you're having a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless, people. I pray that you believe in Jesus. If not, that's okay. I still love you.